Hello, everyone. Welcome back to I See What You're Saying, the Disciplined Listening Podcast. I'm Michael Reddington, and today it is my pleasure to welcome our next guests, Tony and Alisa DiLorenzo. They are the co-hosts of the One Extraordinary Marriage podcast. And in addition to hosting their podcast together, they're also authors, and they coach couples all around the world, which is a calling they were led to after navigating serious challenges in their own marriage together and coming out stronger on the other side together. So now they've dedicated themselves to leading other couples to be more intentional and take action. Again, keyword, together. And this is a very important conversation. It's a little bit outside of the normal professional or work-related conversation, a little bit more towards personal relationships, but plenty of these lessons carry into business relationships as well. Certainly not all of them, but some of them are going to carry over into both. So as we look at some of the things that we're going to talk about today, they're going to tell us what their 6 pillars of intimacy represent and how communicating with all 6 of them can create stronger relationships. They're going to talk about recognizing emotional needs, how we navigate the conflict cycle in our relationships, and as we've already mentioned twice, how the most successful couples focus on generating the best outcomes together. It's a great conversation. They do a wonderful job communicating off of each other, adding to the points, sharing all of their experience, not just in their own personal lives, but from their research and from the couples that they've worked with all over the world for years now. It's a very informative conversation. I'm so grateful they shared their time. And thank you all for being here today to listen as well. While you're here, please just take a quick minute, like the show, share the show, subscribe to it so you get a heads up when the next one drops. Share us your feedback. We would love to hear from you. And while you're online, please just check out our sponsors. Head over to humantel.com. Once you've looked through all of their resources and training, choose the one you like the best and enter the code INCOISIVE25 for 25% off their best-in-class online training to recognize when people's emotions are shifting by identifying changes in their facial expressions and nonverbal communication. For the professional interviewers in the audience, please check out certifiedinterviewer.com. That's where you want to go to get all your questions answered to both joining the International Association of Interviewers and earning your certified forensic interviewer designation. It's over at certifiedinterviewer.com. And while you're online, please check out inclusive.com to learn more about the programs our clients ask us to custom facilitate for their senior leaders, sales teams, HR teams, and more to teach them how to apply the techniques necessary to uncover hidden value in all of their high-stakes conversations that leads to building stronger relationships and achieving better outcomes, again, together. We really appreciate you being here week after week. Thank you so very much. So now, without further ado, I introduce to you, Tony and Alisa. Tony and Alisa, it is great to meet you both. Thank you so much for being here today. How are you?
We're doing great.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Michael.
Oh, my pleasure. Really, I'm excited for this conversation because, asking for a friend, of course. There's so many things we can all learn to be better communicators in our life, but especially in our marriage. Mm-hmm. And as much as I would love to stand here and tell you that I'm the perfect husband, my wife is no doubt going to listen to this episode, and I don't want her to get sick wherever she's driving to when she hears me say that.
Understand.
Yeah. And honestly, even taking it outside of marriage, there are so many, I think, communication lessons and approaches that we should be using with the people we love the most that apply outside of those conversations. Mm-hmm. And speaking for myself, this is enough about me that I'm going to get to you right now, I promise. Because I teach communication, people will ask me, what are my hardest conversations?
Yeah.
And they're honestly with my wife, with my son, with the people I love the most. Because when it's job related, it's a job. Like it's easier to put my emotions aside. It's easier to focus on outcomes. The consequences aren't, so maybe I lose a client or maybe I don't get the truth or whatever, but I'm not risking my marriage. Right. So the consequences are even deeper. So those are all the reasons and more. Well, I'm so thankful that you guys are here today. I really appreciate it. So let's kick it off with this. You do so much coaching. You have your own podcast. You connect with people in so many different ways. And as I was preparing for the episode, I was looking at some of the core elements of what you do. And one of the things that caught my attention really quick is, I believe, what you refer to as your 6 pillars of intimacy. I could probably speak for myself and maybe some others when the word intimacy generally brings across one thought. But in reality, as I started preparing for this conversation, it can mean many different things. So to finally ask the first question 10 minutes later, could you please walk us through your 6 pillars of intimacy?
Yeah. And so it's interesting. So when we do say intimacy, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Mm-hmm.
Just answer it, Michael. When I say intimacy, what is it? What comes to your mind?
Sex.
Yeah. Boom. And, Elise and I speak on stages all the time, and that's the first question. Some people are sheepish. They're sort of like, sex. And other people are like, yeah. In actuality, intimacy isn't many things. It's two things. By definition, it's closeness and connection. That's what intimacy is. And so after podcasting for 15 years at this point, our community, we call them the one family, we learned over the years that there are these 6 pillars of intimacy. And again, it's closeness and connection. And how do we bring couples together?
Absolutely. And, what we started seeing in the emails that we would get or when we'd meet people face to face is that there was this deep desire to have closeness and connection, but not just sexual connection.
Right.
And that's when we really started to tease out, well, what are those ways that individuals in a marriage want to be close and connected? And the 6 are emotional intimacy. So your communication, how you express yourself, your tone of voice, all of that. Your physical intimacy, which is your non-sexual touch. And we very specifically break that out because sexual is number 6. Your 3rd pillar of intimacy is going to be your financial intimacy in a marriage, how the two of you talk and relate about your finances, everything from a budget to insurance and all in between really does play in there.
Yeah. And then the last 3 is spiritual intimacy. What are those beliefs, practices you have that you do together? Recreational intimacy are the fun things you do. This is our fun pillar. Activities that you may do, want to do, dates, that sort of thing. And then finally, as Alisa alluded to, is our sexual intimacy pillar. But we start with emotional intimacy, which is that communication, verbal, nonverbal communication, and then we end it on the sexual intimacy side.
Well, let's get back to that emotional, because that's where you start with anyway. Again, as I step back into the confessional here as part of this conversation and we get rolling, I think for me, expressing emotions or connecting emotionally is the toughest when so many other things are going on, either pressure from work or juggling schedules, or we're taking care of our son, or something happens somewhere, whatever else. So I don't know if that's the same for other couples. I can only speak for myself. I've managed to stay married for almost 11 years now. So I consider myself the luckiest guy in the world. And I feel really bad for Brooke, but she stays with me. So I guess there's a win in there somewhere. So how do you work with couples in order to help them connect emotionally when, I got to say, it seems like our day-to-day lives are out to make that as difficult as possible?
100%. First things first is that we as human beings schedule the things that are most important to us. So whether it was us having this interview on our calendars, where it popped up with a sweet little reminder that said, hey, in 10 minutes, don't forget, you've got an interview with Michael, or doctor's appointments. You mentioned, raising a child, anything associated with our kid, there's an appointment on our calendar for that. And yet in this marriage relationship, so often we just leave it to, hey, we'll get to it when, we can eke out 5 minutes before bed at 11 o'clock when we're exhausted. And that ends up being very unproductive if it even happens at all. And so one of the first things that I work with my coaching clients on is, where can we actually schedule the time where the two of you are going to be awake? You're not going to be your worst versions of yourself. You're not giving each other the leftovers. And you're actually, even in 10 or 15 minute increments, building that connection with one another. It's amazing what happens in a couple's relationship when they give 10 or 15 minutes to just start talking to one another again.
Yeah. I mean, we have to be intentional. 2 things we say here all the time, Michael. You need to be intentional and you need to take action. And when you come into this marriage, and I don't care what age you are or what stage of life you're in, Elise and I got married at 23 and 22. We're going to be married 29 years in October. We've had a lot of life. And the single best thing we have done to foster and strengthen our emotional intimacy is when we started the podcast. And that was 15 years ago. So do the math. That was 13 years into our marriage. But we took 30 minutes. Early episodes could be up to 60 minutes, but we learned hey, the dynamic and what we're doing, we got to cut that a little back. And our people are busy. They lead full lives. So they're like, hey guys, let's get this done. But for Alisa and I, it was a 30-minute, and it is to this day, a 30-minute conversation on something around the 6 pillars of intimacy, on one of those pillars. And we talk about it and we've learned. And the person I am today when it comes to my communication skills is vastly different than when I started 15 years ago. But we put time on our calendar to engage with one another, not in those heightened sensations or times when the proverbial, house is burning down.
Yeah. Well, first, thank you for doing the math for me. It would have been embarrassing if I couldn't do it fast enough. So I appreciate you letting me off the hook there. You said do the math. I got scared. Thank you for taking care of me. When you talk about being intentional and taking action, that advice just should permeate our life in general. I think, but especially in this. And I do, Alisa, love how you called out the not at the end of the day when we're burnt out, because it's unfair, but it does feel like often in marriages or relationships at home, the people that we work with or coach or spend time with during the day get the most of our energy. And the people that we're at home with get the beginning of the day when we're getting wound up and the end of the day when we're getting wound down. So as we're hopefully being more intentional to balance that out and either save more energy or schedule around that energy or make the most of those times, what advice or examples do you have for people to do a better job recognizing the emotional needs of their partners, especially if our wick might be burning pretty low when we need to be able to do that?
Well, there are a couple of different ways to look at this. One is your spouse's body language often tells you a lot about what's going on with them. Now, we often say you cannot read your spouse's mind, but you can read what their body is saying. Whether they have withdrawn, maybe they're not so engaged with you, maybe they've got certain tells. I get very silent when I'm upset. It is just like we used to live in California, and Tony used to call me a California power outage because I would just
she was a blackout.
If I was upset, I was blacked out, like that type of thing. There was no engagement. So it's figuring out and asking your spouse, hey, in moments of calm, I want to know you better. I want to know who you are now. You mentioned that you and your wife have been married for 11 years. How she communicated with you or how you communicated with her 11 years ago when the two of you were newlyweds, compared to where the two of you are now with raising a child, doing all that you do with the podcast and whatnot, and what she does as well, that's vastly different. Mm-hmm. And so being able in those moments of calm to say, hey, I want to stay curious about you. I want to know when you find yourself getting upset, what happens to you? What are those physiological responses that you have? Do you go silent? Does your jaw clench? Do you feel it in your stomach? Do you start to sweat? Because asking that from a place of care and concern, not from a place of, I'm going to get you, allows you to go, okay, you know what? I see her starting to flex her jaw. Or I know years ago, and he still does this every once in a while, when Tony would get nervous about bringing a topic up to me, especially if we were in the car, he would put his hands in front of the vents. So he'd keep one hand on the steering wheel and one hand goes in front of the vent. And he'd alternate. And I'm like, okay, something's coming. Like, what do we need to talk about? Because that was his tell.
Yeah.
In terms, and when we start to learn and stay curious about our spouse, well, there's a deep connection that goes, oh, I see you're doing something that means you're uncomfortable. Let's talk about it.
And Tony, I think making sure nobody gets any air conditioning until this conversation is resolved is a natural way to make sure we stay focused on what we need to talk about. So no judgment there.
Not here in Southwest Florida in the middle of summer. That would not happen.
No, probably not. Or out in California for most of the year. Probably not. I think that might fall under coercive interrogation techniques.
Yeah.
It's a conversation for another day. Alisa, I think you made, again, even within that, a couple of important things that are worth calling out in moments of calm. I think for me, and again, I can only really speak for myself, of course, but the most tempting time to ask somebody what's going on or how are you feeling or, is in that moment where maybe I'm recognizing a shift. So now I'm upset or I'm confused or vice versa. And so in that moment of tension, probably isn't the best time to ask it. So in those moments of calm is a great way to do it. So it comes across more of an invitation, less of an attack, as you said. So I think all great examples there. Thank you. And I might be jumping around here a little bit. We can come back and forth. But as you were talking about that, it made me think of the conflict cycle. that I read
Yeah.
about as I was preparing. So again, I'm the perfect husband. There's no conflict in my life ever. And I certainly never cause it. And my wife may have just crashed into a telephone pole when she heard me say that. But can you please walk us through what your conflict cycle is? And then maybe we can help break it down and learn how we can improve how we navigate it in our own relationships.
Absolutely. Every couple that I've ever worked with is they start to describe, what's going on in their marriage, where they've got friction, tension, conflict, whatever you want to call it. They can describe the dance. And what I saw early on in coaching is that it was like this circle that we just kept spinning around. And I'm like, okay, well, you know what happens when conflict starts? And that's always that initial moment of you're like, the air just shifted. That was not received well. Like you just know, if you've been married for more than a day, you just kind of know conflict has started. I feel uncomfortable. They're acting a little weird. What's going on here? The escalation is when maybe the words start coming out or the actions, and you're like, yeah, it's getting a little warm in this space. We're starting to dig. Maybe the past is coming out ever so slightly or not so slightly. The you always or you never statements start making an appearance. Then in that third phase is really, it's the boiling point. That's the kind of the point of no return where, the boxing gloves, the proverbial boxing gloves are on.
Yes.
And the two of you are engaging in those behaviors that are just like, oh, it feels so destructive to the relationship. There might be tears, there might be, harsh words, there might be withdrawing from one another, in terms of just having to get out and get space. After that comes this cool down period. And that is a place where, I have had couples in the past retreat to man caves. I've had people go on a walk, go for a drive, curl up in the bedroom, take a bath. It's that place where you're like, I need to take stock of me before I can engage with you. I need to get into a place of emotional regulation again. And then finally, the fifth stage is one of two things is going to happen. It's either going to be a return to status quo, where we've just gently swept it under the rug and we don't do anything with it, which means it'll cycle back again. Or you actually the two of you choose to step into a place of resolution where you'll get into those conversations, figure out what happened and how to do things differently the next time around.
Very nice. I'm pausing, Tony, because I want to make sure I'm not cutting you off before you say anything.
Oh, I mean, the only thing I can say is Alisa has worked with many of couples on the conflict cycle, but we're the first case study, and we have experienced this. We do this every day, and our joy and what we come to do here at One Extraordinary Marriage is to impact one marriage every day, and yet we can still end up in that conflict cycle ourselves. We are human just like anybody else, and we can find ourselves just going along, and then something, taps me on the shoulder or taps Alisa on the shoulder, and before you know it, it's starting to escalate a little bit. And then we're like, where are we? And so we understand this, and we've gone through it, as well as seen many other couples in the one family take this and look at the conflict resolution and that conflict cycle and go, okay, where am I? What are we doing?
Yeah, and when you say things tap us on the shoulder, it's environment or context can have such a big impact on that. So I might not know everything she's experienced in her day. She might know everything I've experienced in my day. I might not be aware of a trigger that's just lying dormant somewhere, and I trip over a word, a phrase, a joke, whatever that I didn't know. Maybe if I was a better partner and was more curious, I would have, but I didn't know. So I end up tripping over a wire, and here we go. So I think the way you say it kind of sneaks up and taps you on the shoulder is a great way to say it. And Alisa, when you called out those always or never statements, I'm going to double down because I'm going to use never as I say, don't use never. But I feel like those are never productive and we should always avoid them. How about that for being a hypocrite?
I will say 100% accurate on that one statement, and excellent use of always and never.
Thank you. That might be the only way to use them and actually get away with them.
Right.
But we might feel it in that emotional moment, but it's nearly rare. I'll stay with it's rarely ever true at best. So as soon as we say always, I feel like now we're just tempting the other person to find a time when it wasn't. And as soon as we say never, we're daring them to find a time when they did. And now we're standing in front of a fire pouring gasoline on it, wondering why our face is melting.
Well, and here's what happens, from a communication response standpoint, is that the minute you say you always or you never, whatever comes after that, your spouse immediately, just like you were saying, starts thinking through, well, no, here's an instance where I didn't, or here's an instance where I did. And they've completely stopped listening to anything else that you've said, because they're in this, scavenger hunt in their memory bank of going, no, hold on. He is not right. She is not right. I'm going to prove. And now we're not even talking about the thing. We've stopped identifying, hey, what is the actual problem here? And we've turned our attention to make our spouse the problem because you're not right. That always never statement, that's wrong. And now we start fighting instead of saying, hey, when it comes to our finances, what's going on? When it comes to the kids, what's the challenge here? When it comes to a work situation, what are we really dealing with? And we have to put our attention back on the problem and take it off of our spouse being the problem.
And to just quickly step outside marriage for a moment, that's true in all of our close relationships, iterative relationships, the people we work with, the people that we coach, the people that we see at church, the people that we see, whatever groups that we're in, like those always and never statements will blow those relationships up and those conversations up the same way. It was true as an investigative interviewer. It'll backfire in those conversations too. We got to avoid them. As we look at that conference, yeah, I told you I was going to say something dumb by the time this conversation was over. Conflict cycle. Yeah. For me, I feel like there's plenty to dive into all the way through, but the beginning and the end, I feel like is where the most meat really lies. Because, and correct me, please, this is your area of expertise.
Yeah.
How we begin to deal with it in the beginning has a really big impact on how deep, how far, how long, how wide this whole thing lasts. And then we can circle back and talk about those two choices at the end, because I've got some thoughts there and I would love for you to steer me in the right direction. But if we just talk about it in the beginning now, because conflict is a matter of just life. We're all going to run into it. Sometimes it's avoidable, sometimes not as easily, but we're all going to find ourselves in it. Through your work with your one family, what are some of the best techniques or approaches you have found to maybe get ahead of them? I'll not be saying this the right way, but maybe get ahead of the damage, so to speak,
sure,
and initiate the conversation or the interaction in a way where we can navigate the conflict without creating a 5-alarm fire?
Well, a couple key things. One is we all know the emotionally charged rooms in our home that we've had the finance conversation, the sex conversation, the parenting conversation. You know the drill in those rooms. Oh, we're going to bring this up. Here's how it's going to go. And so actually changing your environment, if you're going to bring up a topic, can have a huge impact on the outcome. One of the things that Tony and I talk a lot about doing is called a walk and talk, right? So if we talk about good things on our walk and talk. So it's not just like, hey, let's go for a walk. And it's always going to be a awful conversation, but we also talk about the hard things. And it changes the dynamic when a husband and wife are side by side having a conversation and moving at the same time. Our bodies expel that energy that is building up. We don't have to sit in this place. I have a 19 and 22-year-old. I have perfected mom-I. Sometimes it comes out at my husband when we're in conflict. So if we're side by side, my mom-I is not nearly as terrifying.
Well, it's noticeable. And once that happens, I'm like, oh, here we go. Like something's irritated Alisa, or as you said, Michael, something could have been like, I have no clue. I don't know every single piece of her day and what's going through her mind and all that. So I could say something in gist or just in fun, but it triggers her. And then I can see that eye go up and it's like, oh, okay, something's really going on. But when we do our walk and talk, I mean, one of the things that we've shared and why we've done this, I mean, for many, many years now, is just to get moving and not like, as Alisa said, we can have so much buildup in certain areas of our lives and just due to past experiences, and we haven't really dealt with them. And that's one thing here too. I mean, I would encourage any married couple not to say that you're broken, messed up, or anything like that. Go get marriage coaching. Go do some sessions. Go through some stuff. You don't have to be at the brink of divorce to get some help in your communication skills. You just don't. It's another tool in your marriage toolbox. Go get it. But for us, that just gets us moving. And it's like, all right, cool. Like that helps me understand what's going on. For some of you people who live up north and it's cold in the winter, and you're like, oh, how would we do that? Well, you get in your car and you go for a drive. figure out different ways to make the same thing happen. But when I was a young married guy, I remember a gentleman just saying, hey, when you need to have that conversation with your wife, just sit across from one another, sit knee to knee, hold her hands, and just look deeply in her eyes. I'm thinking, are you kidding me? Like, I'm 24 years old, 25 years old. My wife is peering into the deepest, darkest depths of my soul. No way am I doing that. like that's scary. And it wouldn't allow me to express. So once we found this way of just being able to move and allow conversation to roll through our walk and talk, it helps so much.
I think another thing too, Michael, just to share, is there are generally two types of people that are married to one another. One likes to talk a lot. And so when it comes to talking about the marriage, they want to talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk some more. And then there's one that does not talk as much, whatever that is. And so a lot of times when it comes to, sharing, when it comes to having these types of conversations, the one that doesn't like to talk as much sometimes feels like they're being held hostage to the one that wants to talk about every nuance of the marriage. And so if you can actually step into a place with these conflict conversations and keep them short and say, hey, let's just talk about this for 15 minutes, see where we are, and then reset, it allows for stronger engagement because it doesn't feel like you're going to be held hostage for 3 hours.
Yeah, I can vouch, or I guess confess, not vouch, to being the one that maybe doesn't talk as much in my house. And by maybe, I mean pretty much certainly, but that's a conversation for another day. And even when you talk about like choosing the right environment or varying the environment, that is immensely critical. Again, in all of our important conversations, maybe a funny story, maybe not. At one point in my career, the person I replaced didn't really do a very good job. So when I came in, there were all kinds of investigations just kind of lying around that needed to be cleaned up. And I had the ability to do it. So I did. And one day when I came in, one of the guys that worked in like the loading dock area stopped me and said, hey, man, just so you know, they're calling you the axe murderer. Ooh. Well, that's not good. I mean, that's not like these people all did the things they did. I didn't walk around and say, today it's your day, like whatever.
Right.
So one of the things, we did many different things, but one of the things we immediately did was started calling people into the office for good news. So people would see like, it's not 2 men enter, 1 man leaves, like people are going back to work. And then we varied the rooms that we had conversations with people in. So in order to break that pattern, and you mentioned walking, there's all kinds of research. You've probably read a bunch of it on the power of walking and being outside and being side by side and all of those things. So that's all great call outs. I feel like we think about even your 6 pillars, so many of the sensitive things that we have to talk about. Money can be a difficult conversation. You mentioned sex can be a difficult conversation. The time that we have or we don't have, the activities, maybe something that I did that upset her or vice versa, whatever it was, maybe needing advice or help or, even sometimes, asking for help. Typical friggin' guy could be difficult for me. Thanks for jumping in there with me, Tony. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So
I've been there, done that.
I find that sometimes initiating the conversation, and Alisa, I feel like you alluded to this a little bit before, the right word choice can go a long way. The wrong word choice can really muck things up. And under stress, it can be hard to make the right word choice when we're in that emotional moment. So you talked about changing the environment. You talked about maybe limiting the time. What are some other techniques that you have seen to be successful to start some of these, for lack of a better term, I'll call them sensitive conversations? That's a big umbrella. So they don't necessarily turn into conflict.
Yeah.
Well, let's just avoid the, can we talk or we need to talk? Like, I'm just going to put it out there. Usually does not bode well for you on the other side of whatever you're hoping to accomplish. If a couple will set aside time and just come with their heart. Hey, I've been feeling this way. Not you did. I've been feeling. I tell my coaching clients all the time, like, your feelings are yours. Understanding where they came from and again, engaging in this place of questions. I think one of the things I love about, even having this conversation with you, Michael, is what are the questions that you're asking to learn more? So if your spouse comes to you and like, I feel so overwhelmed, instead of being like, well, I have a lot of things to do too. And you're like, well, that's just not going to go well because now we're just, scorekeeping and trying to up the ante. Oh, honey, you feel so overwhelmed. What's on your plate today? There'll be time to talk about you later. Like, you'll get to it. But But just stepping into a place of empathy when your spouse brings something up. Wow, I probably didn't know how busy you were today. Okay, well, now all of a sudden her temperature is going to be way lower because it's like, oh my gosh, he heard me and he cares and he's amazing. As opposed to this combative, well, me too. And then you get in. And so it's choosing empathy first, choosing curiosity, not attacking and not competing with your spouse. You want to compete on emotions, you both are going to lose.
And I'll lose worse, guaranteed, because I'll make it worse on myself. And you're right, because when I say, well, I do too, or I have too, or now it is a competition. So kind of like we're attacking the always or never, like before, I'll just do, I'm hurt too, whatever, vague example. So now it's a competition for who's more hurt and who's been hurt longer and who has the deepest wounds. And I said, well, that's not helping anybody. Blame never solved the problem, and it's not going to start today.
Correct.
Yeah. One of the things that Alisa and I did, and for those who have jobs, maybe, Alisa and I now work together and have for a number of years. But there was a time I had another business and I would leave the house, 8:30 every morning, sometimes earlier. But I would find it throughout the day as we were engaging one another and learning how to do communication better was not to wait till the end of the day. Like, find time to text her, find time. Maybe I'm driving between one job and another and just picking up the phone and saying, hey, how's your day going? It wasn't always, she didn't always pick up the phone. She wasn't always available. But I find like we live in an age where we can have pretty much instant access with our spouse. And I grew up in a time when we didn't have that. My dad had one of the first car phones ever where I grew up in Southern California, and big old block of a thing sat in his construction truck. Now we take it for granted and we take our spouse for granted. And I think we need to, like Alisa said, just have some of that caring and that empathy for our spouse. And, again, I'm not saying we're perfect. I'm not saying it's going to work out every single time. And yet, can we make an opportunity? Can we take a moment in our day to say, hey, honey, I've been thinking about you. I love you, with an emoji or something. It doesn't take a lot when we really look at it. Unfortunately, we tell ourselves the lie that our day is so full, I don't have any breath. And don't get me wrong. Hey, if you're an ER doc and you got a 12-hour shift, I get it. Like, man, you are probably wired to wire. And yet I probably would expect maybe throughout that 12-hour shift, you may have a moment to go get a little food in you or something. And if you can do something of just like, I love you, I'm thinking about you, I'm right in between 2 surgeries, just want you to know that. It can add a lot to your spouse and to your marriage.
Great point. It just takes a second, and we can all find a second. And some days are harder than others. Some situations are harder than others. But generally speaking, we can all find a second. So let's flip to the far end of the conflict cycle now. Either the return to status quo or what was the word that you used? The resolution. Moving towards resolution. I promise I've been keeping notes. I feel like returning to the status quo feels like a solution, even though it's not. It's the easy way out. It's the conflict averse response to handling conflict. And while I sound judgmental, who knows how many times I've been guilty of this, by the way. So I'm in my glass house lobbing reasonably sized stones at the moment. So I guess maybe the first question to ask would be, from your experience, why do you think couples might default to returning to the status quo after even re-experiencing similar conflict?
Couple of reasons. One is it's become a pattern of behavior. So it's what we do. We fight, we blow up, it gets quiet again, and then we just kind of go back to living our lives because that's what we do. For a lot of folks, that's what you saw modeled with your own parents. You never actually saw your parents work through conflict. And so this idea of getting to a place of resolution, of opening the conversation again, you don't even know what that looks like. And that's not an indictment on parents. It's simply saying that a lot of us grew up in homes where we didn't see our parents fight. And there was actually, a lot of parents who, and even this still happens today, who are proud of the fact that their children have never seen them fight or experience conflict. And as a coach, I'm always like, yeah, but they're going to be married and they're going to experience conflict in their own marriage. And what are they going to do? We don't know. A lot, and the other reason why so many couples are in that place is because they don't know how to open up the conflict without reopening all of the emotions. And so it feels like, oh, well, if I bring it up again, if we try and address the finances or the kids or sex or conversations or whatever it is, we're just going to go back into the emotional state instead of saying, hey, can we identify what the actual problem is? And I'm going to come to this again. Too often in conflict, and I think the last 5 years of social media and politics and all this kind of stuff have made it so that we look at a person and we think the person is the problem, instead of looking at the context and going, what are we trying to solve for? Oh, if we have a problem with visiting, choosing which parents or in-laws we're going to visit at Christmas, that's the problem, not you or me or anything like that. We need our own system for the Christmas holidays, or we need our own system for money. It's not that you're a spender and I'm a saver. It's we don't have a system that we're both sticking to. And so when our eyes go off the problem and onto our spouse, we're just like, it's just going to be emotional and I don't want to deal with the emotions again. And so people avoid it because they aren't dealing with the problems.
So I have to follow up and ask, how do we re-engage the conflict without risking ripping off all those emotional band-aids and here we go again?
Well, I'm going to just say this. You're going to have conflict at times.
Of course.
Michael, you and your wife are going to have conflict at times. I think what Alisa is sharing is spot on. And the reason we go back to that status quo is because we don't want to feel the emotions again. We don't want to rip off the Band-Aid, like you said. And yet, if we don't, it's just trauma that gets built up, right? So there are a couple of things you can do in these moments that I believe you should be doing as a couple is, one, let's decompress. Like, let's take our time. Alisa and I have been here before. We need our space. And what we tell people a lot now in our marriage is we can have conflict, but we can resolve it faster. What used to take us days, we can do in hours, sometimes less, because we just have learned. And too many couples wait and they hang out and they hope their spouse is going to say something. But really, the two of you need to come together and go, all right, we just need a 24-hour moratorium and just hanging out. Let's get some time. But we do need to bring it back up when we're in another state, which is calmer, had time to think about our own actions, how that played out, and trying to move forward from it and resolving something of that whole thing. Like, again, you and I and all of us have been in arguments where it starts in one place and then before you know it, 10 other landmines hit you. And it's like, man, let's just address one of these landmines. And we do need to address these others, but can we at least resolve one of these, which is where we started? And so it's more of like, can we find the time and are we willing to come back to one another to address it? Because it's real easy just to let it go. We've done a number of episodes, at least one for sure, on makeup sex. It's so easy just to be like, all right, we let it go under the rug. Oh, we just had sex. We made up. We're good. Emotions are high. Euphoria is high. You're feeling good. I'm feeling good. And we can move on.
And I think, with that, getting away from just slapping a Band-Aid on it.
Yeah.
And stepping into this place of even being able to, in that, whatever that time frame is, I find that most, again, in spouses, just like there's, one spouse that likes to talk and one spouse that doesn't want to talk as much, there's usually one person that wants to resolve right away. Yeah. And the other one that's like, yeah, I'm good. If we could just take some time not to talk about this. When there is space to process, it's important to not just be ignoring the problem, but actually processing it. So what are my emotions? What was I upset about? What did I feel? And that may even mean getting like an emotion wheel or a feelings wheel and looking at that and saying, okay, I know it was anger. I know I felt angry, but was I angry because I'm scared about what's happening with our finances? Am I feeling neglected because we haven't spent time together? What's the emotion behind the anger?
And you know what an emotion wheel is, right, Michael?
Are you familiar with that?
I'm assuming it's a wheel with different emotions on it.
You are correct.
So everybody who's watching, you can see that. I'm just lifting one up. But you can get these on Amazon, and you'll see the 6 core emotions in the center here. And then as you come out to this second level, you have more words. And then as you get out to the third level, you just keep breaking it down. So you're not always sitting in a state of like, I'm angry at you, or I'm sad, or I'm happy. You're like, oh, I'm angry, but I'm distant and suspicious because of the way you reacted when I said this, or this.
Sure.
And as you get into using different words and expanding your emotional vocabulary, it does allow you to get more into resolution, because now it's not just the presenting emotion of anger, it's what's behind it and what's the cause of that.
Yeah.
And again, not blaming the person, but understanding the context.
Which is a mantra for life. Context is the most important thing to understand in almost any situation. Why people are acting, behaving, responding, whatever the way that they are is going to change as the context changes around them. One of my favorite things that I used to do when I would teach interviewing is talk with people who interview in a public setting. Like, okay, so you're in a restaurant and you're interviewing somebody who might have been a witness to a crime, and all of a sudden they like shade their eyes and they look away from you. What's the first thing you do? And people are, well, I think they're lying. What are they scared of? What did I just say? How about who just walked by? Let's look at this with a different lens here.
Yes.
So that contextual awareness is so important in getting down. I know this word gets thrown around too much, or words, but getting down to the root cause. Okay.
Yeah.
If I'm angry, why? And is there a chain of emotions? Is there even a chain of events? Am I now playing the spiral game where it started one, but it linked to these three other things? And now, here we are. So all great. I don't want to ignore moving towards resolution. I feel like we could probably spend the next hour just talking about returning to the status quo.
Yeah.
Where do you see, or maybe the better question is, how do you see couples making that pivot from accepting the status quo to committing to move towards a resolution?
I think a lot of it, and I reframe this for a lot of my couples, that they're not adversaries, they're on the same team. And when you make that mindset shift of saying, okay, if we're on the same team, then working towards resolution, working towards a solution, and it's not compromise. It's not somebody has to give up and somebody has to, gets what they want, the other person has to give up. It's saying, what is the best possible outcome for the two of us in any one of these areas? And how do we do that together? Too often we get into these places, and I've seen it in the last almost 3 decades that Tony and I have been married, where it's like one person points the finger at the other and says, you have to do this. Instead of saying, what can we do? If we're going to, in any type of resolution in a conflict, it's going to require action on both spouses' parts, because you both have to show up in the resolution. It's not just like, well, you broke my trust, so you've got to be 100% perfect. Well, if I don't accept your perfection or whatever your actions are, then who cares? I have a role to play. You have a role to play. And that resolution starts to gel when we both identify what the situation is, and we both own and take responsibility for our actions in making that solution a reality.
And can I just say one thing, though, because we're talking about conflict and we're talking about marriage, if anything goes to the point of emotional abuse, physical abuse, that is I'm out of here. Like, that is not acceptable. Resolution isn't, hey, I hit you and I put you in your place, and that can come from the wife or it can come from the husband. It can go either way. And we resolve this by you just taking that. That's unacceptable. And I just want to say that because abuse does happen both emotionally, verbally, and physically. And that is not what we're talking about here. And it is our desire that you get help, seek out help, reach out to us. We can get you resources so that way you can find help in your area. But that's something I just want to put out there, Michael.
Oh, let me kind of double or triple down on several of those thoughts before we get back to the previous conversation. Thank you for offering to allow people to reach out to you to help for that, because sometimes just not knowing where to go or who to call. So if someone's listening right now and they're experiencing something along those lines and they don't know who to reach out to, you guys are easy to find, but I'm going to put all your contact info in the show notes anyway, so people can reach out to you, say they heard you here, they can start the conversation. I know that was a sincere offer. But not only is that behavior unacceptable and hopefully is a relationship ender in a lot of scenarios, like get out, go get help. you deserve better, treat yourself better, all of those things. Our current legal system doesn't allow for sufficient punishment for those types of behaviors. So if you're acting that way, there's a whole nother set of problems. But certainly if you're experiencing that, then yes, that's not healthy. That's not part of a loving, supportive relationship. That's not the type of conflict that we're talking about working through here.
Yeah.
So thank you for bringing it. Serious topic, but thank you for bringing it up. I guess this is all serious topics, but way more serious topic.
Right.
I love when you said you have to versus what can we do. My wife is an amazing human being, not just because she deals with me all the time, but she's an amazing wife. She's an amazing mother. And our son started wrestling several years ago. And when he did, he was struggling to keep up with what the coach was saying and learn the technique or whatever. And so he stood, when they said, okay, go, he stood still next to his partner, assuming that the coach would see him and he would be able to say, hey, how do I do this? I don't know how to do this. And the coach maybe chose not to see him, maybe didn't see him. I don't know. I'm not in the coach's head, but whatever. The coach doesn't see him. And so Gabe was young at the time. I think he was like 5, maybe 6. And so he starts getting upset because he really he wants to do this thing. He wants to learn it, but he doesn't know how. And so when he said to one of the coaches, I don't know how to do this, the coach kind of brushed him off a little bit. I don't think the coach was great for that age group, probably great for another age group, but not that specific age group. Yeah. But my wife, when we were talking to Gabe after about learning lessons and how to handle it in the future, she had a friggin' phenomenal piece of advice for him. Don't say, I don't know how to do it. Say, please show me how. And often the questions we ask have a direct result on how our mindset is interpreted, how our emotions are interpreted, how motivated the person is to act or not act in a certain direction based on how they hear them. So the right answer to the wrong question is still the wrong question. Or the wrong answer, excuse me. So really being intentional about the questions that we ask, and whether it's using goal-oriented language or inclusive language and not blaming language or solution-focused language, there's probably 100 different ways we could go. That is more likely to get us towards a true resolution as opposed to forcing us back into the status quo because I'm just freaking sick and tired of this. So I'm going to chuck it up and I'm going to go back to the rest of my day.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. Please show me how, or, what can we do to be better as a couple in this area, right? So it's not you have to be better. It's what can we, and so it's stepping into that place of remembering that there was a point in time, a very specific point in time when you thought this person was the absolute end all be all, and you wanted to spend the rest of your life with them.
Yep.
And you might have just kind of, in that moment thought, well, we're never going to have any problems that love can't solve. Been there, done that. I probably have 2 or 3 medals to prove that full mentality. And yet learning how to resolve conflict, learning how to engage in these conversations. I want to tell every single person listening, this is skill development. This is not like some people got the conflict resolution skill and, at birth, and some people didn't. And if you didn't, well, then you know what? You're just out of luck for the next 60, 80 years. You can develop these skills. You can develop, you can pick up an emotion wheel and say, I'm going to learn what I'm feeling. You can stop and pause. And I say this to a lot of men and women. Hey, stop and pause and take a breath before you're going to open your mouth and say something to your spouse. Chances are good you will say something nicer if you don't just stream of conscious, #no filter with your spouse. They would much rather you pause and then just be like, okay, let me take a breath and then I'll communicate with you.
Yeah, another great rule for life. Don't ever say the first words to come into your brain.
Take 2 seconds, 3 seconds, pause,
Take it through.
take a breath. And also remember, when we're talking about the marriage relationship, it's a lifetime. It's a journey. And I think in today's day and age, when we look at around, and social media has honestly, and Michael, you can say what you think of it, but I think it really, especially around communication and stuff, it makes it look like it's very easy and everybody should be able to do it. And if you don't understand it, you should be able to pick this up in 1 or 2 times. And really, it's something that you need to practice just like anything else. If you're on your company softball team, you probably practice, once or twice before you guys get out on the field. If you're somebody who likes to play piano, you're probably practicing on your piano before you go out and do it at your local community or whatever. It's the same thing in marriage. And too often, I think we just think it's supposed to just happen because we're married and we live together and we sleep in the same bed and we have we're sexually intimate with one another. And it's like, no, this takes some practice. It's going to take a little work. I think it's one of the best places that you probably should invest in, because this is somebody you're going to do life with till the day you take your last. And so put the effort in, be intentional. Like I said, be intentional and take action.
Yeah, and it's a great circle back to the intentionality of it. And you're right. And I think that's where kind of one of the things I rambled on in the beginning, it gets harder in the relationships that mean the most. If it's a job,
Yes.
if it's a team, well, I'm supposed to do it this way. I'm supposed to practice. I'm supposed to. But I think you're right. It's, I guess, maybe one of the unstated expectations of close relationships, marriage especially, but even others, friendships, family, whatever, is it's supposed to be intuitive. Well, as soon as we start relying on that, we are sitting in a pile of gas, lighting matches. Like there's going to be accidental burns here as we go through. I feel like let me get back to your statement on social media. I would need an emotional wheel that was all purely negative. I would need to find the most negative word on that wheel. I would need to multiply that negativity by 100, and you might get close to how I feel about social media.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, it gives you an idea. For the reasons that you said, and so many more. Like lives are just destroyed. Personalities are destroyed. Brains are rotted. Perceptions are distorted. Expectations are jacked up. It's pure evil.
Yeah.
All of it.
Social media is, in my completely unsolicited opinion, that might cause people to stop listening to me forever, whatever. It's a terrible thing that happens to do good things by accident, in my opinion. Like, yeah, good things have happened from social media, but I think if you were going to like rank and keep score, the bad team has an insurmountable lead on the good team at this point.
Well, again, we go to communication though, and I think you can get on it. I can get on it. People can just spout off.
Yeah.
That's not communicating.
No.
That's not, like, I've had people before, Michael, like email us and spout off and say stuff. And my response has been, before you hit send, read and reread what you just wrote. And then think in your mind, would you say that if we were sitting or standing across from one another? Because if you're shaking your head like you are, then you probably just need to delete it and move on with your life, because I wouldn't just come up to you and say that. And I think in marriage, sometimes we see this stuff and we think we can just spout off and say, well, I just want to say what's on my heart. No. Like, the emotional intimacy isn't just gives you a
Carte blanche.
Carte blanche. That's it. Thank you, baby doll.
Teamwork.
A carte blanche just to say whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you got to be able to regulate and know how to speak and share those feelings and ask those questions like you said.
Yeah, I was just, even being a part of this conversation, I think of how many times specifically around social media where it's not a dialogue. No. Everybody engages in their own monologue and believes that what they have to say is the most important thing. And when you bring that back to marriage, if I think I'm the most important person in the conversation and you think you're the most important person in the conversation, we're not going to actually dialogue. It's when we flip that and I say, oh, you're important. I want to hear what you have to say. Now, all of a sudden, when that role reversal happens, now we get to dialogue and we get to resolution. We get to understanding other people's emotions, but it starts with that shift of you're not the most important person in the room.
For sure. And I would love your critique on this. For me, I believe, and you brought up communication, Tony, communication, listening in particular, but communication as a whole is an outcome-driven exercise. And how we do it, who we do it with, when we do it, how we choose to observe all of this should be driven by the outcome that's most important at any moment in time, stage of relationship, whatever. And my personal opinion is that often when our emotions get the best of us and we say or do something that we'd like to have back, it's because in that moment in time, our emotion became more important to us than the outcome.
Mhm.
And if we can keep the outcome more important than the emotion, now neither you or I is the most important thing in this conversation. It's the outcome.
That's
And
right.
when I think about my marriage, which again, and my family, which again, I'm certainly imperfect at, there'd be a whole couple hour conversation on that, I'm sure. But there's nothing more important to me than the long-term health, happiness, success, relationship of my family, my wife, my son, and I. That's it. So when things happen, unexpected, unplanned, I said something that I shouldn't have, whatever, expectations weren't met, it doesn't make a difference. For me, when I handle that, and I don't do it perfectly all the time, and I probably do it poorly sometimes, trying to remember that the outcome, the long term, is the most important thing, should do a better job keeping us grounded and executing so many of the techniques that you're talking about. Technique might be the wrong word, approaches, perspectives that you're talking about here. Maybe a quick funny story. Years ago, I was teaching out in the Midwest, and I was doing a 3-hour workshop, and one of the business owners in the back raised his hand with a very disdainful look on his face. And I didn't have a choice. I had to call on him. So I'm like, hey, man. And he looks at me. He's like, I'm really disappointed. I thought you were going to do a better job teaching me how to listen today. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, there's an hour left on the clock. So this could be salvageable. I said, well, what do you mean? He says, for instance, with my wife. I'm like, this is going to be good. Yeah, that was my reaction. This is going to be good. He says it takes her at least 15 minutes to say something she could have said in 2, and I can't listen for the next 13 minutes. And for people that know me, they know sarcasm is my native tongue. I knew I had a problem when my son was like 3, and he looked at me and was like, Dad, are you being sarcastic or are you being serious? Like, that's an indication of a problem.
Okay.
But I couldn't catch myself in time. So in front of a room full of people, I looked at that dude and said, I can't teach you how to care.
Wow.
It is true. The bottom line is, if we don't care enough about not just the person, but the outcome, because I feel like I can care enough about my wife, she can care enough about me, but if we don't care enough about the outcome, then we don't have the motivation or the incentive or the wherewithal, the brain power to make the adjustments and take on some of the approaches that you guys are talking about here today. And I think it's very important that we do.
Yeah.
Well, I think what that story highlights, and I love that, and I'm so glad that you made that statement in front of all of those people, because I think he probably needed a very extreme wake-up call, is that a lot of couples don't know what the outcome is. Like, they've never set an intention, or what is the goal that we're going after in our marriage? Like, our business is One Extraordinary Marriage. We often refer to, what is your extraordinary marriage? Like, what does that mean? Where do you want to be? Like just hitting 50 years together doesn't mean anything if they're 50 crappy years.
Yeah.
But what do you want your life to look like in the first 10, 15, 20 years that you're married? What's the legacy that you're going to pass on to your son? If we can get clear on that, then when we're having an argument, when we're in conflict, it's easy to come back to, hey, babe, we know we want to teach our son how to do conflict well. We know that sometimes we're not going to get it right. And we know that we are in this for the next 50 years, and we want to do it well. Let's take 20 minutes. Let's take 30 minutes. Now, all of a sudden, all of the positive attributes of the outcome have been stated. And if you know what they are, you can state them, so that if we take 20 minutes, if we take an hour to process through, well, we're doing that through the lens of, here's what the outcome is. But if you don't know what your outcome is, the emotions will always override.
None of us are going to get on a plane without knowing where it's going to land before it takes off.
Correct.
But yet, how many times do we get into a conversation or even a relationship without an idea of where it could take us? So what you just said was gold. I know we're encroaching time, and you guys no doubt have a very busy day. I have a feeling that you've already answered the next question I'm going to ask you multiple times over, but I should probably just ask the most direct question that maybe I've avoided the whole time. What's the best marriage advice you have that we haven't talked about yet?
Ooh, that we haven't
talked about yet.
That's a unique question.
Okay, let me think here. You go first.
Oh, that says I need more time to think response. We actually did talk about it, but I think it needs to be reemphasized, is that choosing to care over the lifetime of a marriage. Like, we don't just choose to care on our wedding day or choose to care when the kids first come, but making the choice to care for a lifetime, it is a choice. And it's a choice you have to make every single day.
That was really good. Are you doing that every single day?
I'm not perfect. We are very clear on the One Extraordinary Marriage show that I am not perfect. Tony, on the other hand, maybe a little bit, but me not so much.
No. Gosh,
You even took the extra time.
I know, but I'm just trying to. This is the thing that we haven't talked about that I think people need to look at. Marriage has many. We talked about the 6 pillars of intimacy, and so I can lean on there, but I just want to say this: of those 6 pillars of intimacy, we can have cracks in all of them, maybe 1 or 2 of them at any point in time. And when that is happening, it can be very easy to get frazzled. It can be very easy to go, I can't plug all the holes. I can't fix all the cracks. And so we stop. And what I would tell you right now, if you're listening, pick one, look at just one right now that you can begin to make a difference in your marriage and even in yourself. And it's what we call that is a, what can I do? What can I do right now to begin to shift things in my marriage and in my own life? Because I know what it's like when everything feels like it's crumbling. We try to hold everything up and we just don't have the power, but we can take one thing and look at it for 30 days and begin to press in and begin to make change that can lead to an extraordinary marriage. And we're a testament to it. And there are thousands of couples in the one family who that's their testimony.
Fantastic points. You just mentioned the one family.
Yeah.
So now I'd like to turn it over to you for the people that have listened to this and they're like, whoa, Tony and Lisa have some great stuff. I really appreciate this. This resonates with me. There's got to be a lot more where this comes from, like 4,892 podcast episodes and what you teach and all that other stuff. So for the people that would like to connect with you two, to learn more, continue the conversation, continue exploring their relationships, where do they go? What do they do? How do they stay connected with you?
Yeah, super simple, everybody. oneextraordinarymarriage.com. That's it. If you need to look us up on social, look up the podcast, anything, One Extraordinary Marriage. So it's real simple and easy to find us. And as Michael said, we do have, a lot of episodes. We've been podcasting for 15 years, so you can jump right in. You can get the 6 Pillars of Intimacy book, dive into it so that you can begin to create that extraordinary marriage you desire.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. And earlier you mentioned that one of the goals you share is to impact at least one marriage every day. So I'm sincerely hopeful that there are people listening to this conversation and we've done at least that today. So thank you for sharing that goal with us. Thank you for sharing a window into yourselves, your life, your marriage, what your One Extraordinary Marriage family has taught you and giving us all plenty to think about and apply in our marriages and our relationships as well. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thanks a lot, Michael.
Oh, my pleasure. Take care. Tony and Alisa, thank you for a wonderful conversation. I really appreciate your openness, your sincerity, your willingness to share your own personal experiences. That really means a lot. Thank you so much. I know you gave me plenty to think about in my marriage and relationship, and I hope that a lot of listeners got things that they can take back to their relationships as well. I really appreciate the work that you do and all that you shared. Thank you. There are a lot of great ideas in there. Just to call out a few, I really like how you talked about avoid saying always and never. I know I try to, but I drop the ball on that from time to time. That's a great way to add fuel to the fire and not actually work towards resolving a conflict, which also feeds into why it was important, as you mentioned, to talk about how you feel, not what the other person did to make you feel that way. Another great point. And I really like how you also talked about scheduling what's important in our busy lives, work, raising the kids, other things we have going on. Sometimes the person who we need to spend time with the most is the one that we get the least amount of time with. So scheduling that time can be very important. Thank you so much for all you shared. And again, thank you to everybody who joined us for another week. We really appreciate it. Before you go, please just take a second, like the show, subscribe to it, share it with your network, leave us your feedback. We'd certainly love to hear from you. And while you're online, please check out our sponsors. Head over to humantel.com. Check out all of their resources, all of their training. Choose the one that you believe is best for you, and then enter the code INQUASIVE25 for 25% off their best-in-class online training to recognize when people's emotions are shifting by identifying changes in their facial expressions and nonverbal communication. I've done it all myself. I highly recommend it over at humantel.com. For professional interviewers in the audience, please check out certifiedinterviewer.com. That's where you can get all your questions answered for both joining the International Association of Interviewers and earning your certified forensic interviewer designation. That's all over at certifiedinterviewer.com. And finally, while you're online, please check out inquasive.com to learn more about the programs our clients ask us to facilitate for their senior leaders, sales teams, HR teams, and more, to teach them how to uncover hidden value in their high stakes conversations by applying strategic observation and persuasive communication techniques. We really appreciate you being here week after week. Thank you so very much. Please stay safe, take care of each other, and we'll see you next time.